What?
Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
What's up, Fantasy Points? This is Outside the Box Week 17. We're going to be going position by position, looking at the best tournament plays. I am your host, Neil Orfield. I'm here as usual with the master of dank stats, CEO of Fantasy Points, and my friend, Scott Barrett. Scott, how are you doing on this fine Saturday?
Your friend? Are we friends, Neil?
Are we not friends? Oh my God, this is news to me if we're not friends.
It would be hilarious if this is like a late stages Opie and Anthony where we just like secretly hated each other, but the show was so good.
I think half of our audience thinks that you hate me, Scott. So
or Siskel and Ebert is the same. No, I love you, Neil. You're one of my favorite people in the world. I don't like doing shows, podcasts, but always a blast doing it with you. That's why we linked up.
That is why we linked up.
But like not probably extra grumpy today because I wrote a lot of words yesterday and then I had to change a bunch of stuff and then I had to change it again. And then this morning just got bombed with news. So it is it feels like a preseason week, like preseason DFS in the regular season. And so this is why John Proctor makes the big bucks. This is why you guys should tune into our Sunday morning show. He is the most profitable preseason DFS player ever, pretty sure. And so I would say this is Johnny week, but where it's just a lot of news you have to react to, a lot of implications. I think some teams are fully giving up things like that where the data doesn't really fully account for it. But I think we're going to do well. You know, I said like Thanksgiving after that was like, oh, I have a big edge because like I work nonstop, you know, not distracted by Christmas. I'm grinding the spreadsheets. And so there's a little bit of that, but it's also like Christmas kind of like throws teams off and it makes things tricky. Like look how gross that Seattle Chicago game was. And so there's that. And there's uncertainty with like all these injuries where it's just like Raheem Blackshear. Do we really know? Like it's kind of just like fragile projections, all these different variables at play that are hard to conceptualize. But I will say like competition, I think is going to be really soft. And so I don't know. I'm going to have fun breaking this down with you. No, confidence levels should be a little bit lower than typical. But I think this is a fun slate.
I saw a tweet from some beat writer saying he's expecting Mike Boone to get a lot of action this week for the Panthers.
A Boone season from Joe Person, who's like probably their best beat writer. So could it be Blackshear? Could it be like an old dusty Mike Boone who's never done anything? I think you have to give the lean to Boone, but we can get into that later.
Yeah, we will get into that later. We're going to start with quarterbacks. I do want to say I have a different take than you do on Johnny Proctor. Screw that guy, in my opinion. Just beat me in the cage match I guess not this week. It was last week. Broke my streak in the cage match. That was not fun losing that one to Proctor. And special guest coming up this week in the cage match for week 18. Scott, I know you're aware. Maybe the people aren't aware. Just one win on the season for Jake Tribby, who's been at this for like 15 weeks. I think we've done the show, something like that. Also one win on the season for Scott Barrett, who has been on the show one time this season. Scott is going to be our special guest on the cage match this week. Who is going to get to two first? Hopefully neither. Hopefully it's going to be me, but that'll be fun if the matchup Scott versus Jake, who can get to two wins first. I'm excited.
We will never let him live it down. And if he beats me, then that takes some of my bragging rights and trash talking away. So we can't let that happen, Neil. We should do it like the collusion bros do.
I was going to suggest colluding. Yeah.
All right.
It's tougher with
100% do that.
It's tougher with a draft rather than just like making our lineups, but we can try to collude. All right. Jake doesn't even know, unless he's watching the show right now. He doesn't even know yet that you're coming on the show for the ultimate trash talk. All right, let's start with quarterbacks. And this is a short slate. You can see all of the quarterbacks on the slate on the screen right now. Although Tua is on here right now, that's going to have to be changed because he's now doubtful. But short slate, you can see all the quarterbacks. Sam Darnold is getting the most ownership currently, Scott, 21% ownership at 6,400. How do you feel about Sam Darnold?
Yeah, that's the other thing is it's a short slate, which makes it a little tricky where inevitably there's always like one guy who I'm like, yeah, I'm not really he's in play. Like, I don't think he's a great play. Probably not going to end up on him. And then like, if he scores, like not even like a what we would typically define as like a slate breaking performance, but is just like pretty good. You might have had to have him. So I kind of don't love slates this short. And then the other component here is you look at the over-unders on the week. You have Green Bay, Minnesota 48.5. You have Tampa, Carolina 48. And then there's just like nothing that comes close to that. You have like the one-sided Bills in what should be a beatdown in the Jets. And it's just, so you have a lot of ownership congregating to the top. And so Sam Darnold, I do think is the best. He's our recommended cash quarterback this week. I think the stack is enticing. You could play Hawkinson. Our guy John Hansen like really likes Hawkinson this week. I tight end funnel matchup. There's a few things, but like you've really seen him not be like the 2023 TJ Hawkinson. A big reason for that is you have Addison really kind of cementing himself as the number 2. And then there's this big tier drop between him and anyone else. And so over the last, what is it? The Vikings have like already been one of the top 5 most pass heavy offenses by pass rate over expectation. But since week 11, they're up to like 9%. So they've doubled that up. Over this span, Jefferson ranks 6th in fantasy points per game. Addison ranks 8th. They've combined for 430 plus DraftKings fantasy points per game over the span. Only the Bengals have more than 3 such games all year. So this does look like a really attractive stack. And so I get why it's drawing ownership. I think maybe if I did the double spy, I might just eat the Sam Darnold chalk. But I don't know. There's a few different things you can do this week. I will say I like Josh Jacobs a lot as leverage, maybe paired with Vikings defense. I think that's a really good play. But yeah,
you mean Aaron Jones, right?
No, actually, Josh Jacobs is what I meant.
You mean the opposing running back with the Vikings defense?
No, sorry, with the Packers defense.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, gotcha.
Because Jari's out. I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's Aaron Jones, but because you can play that way, and he's a great value for us. But even with Jari out, I think this is like a pretty tough matchup. And you've just seen the Packers go incredibly run heavy. It's working out really well for Josh Jacobs, and he grind the clock down. But I don't know. Like I said, Darnold's a great play.
How do you feel about Jordan Love at 6,200? I personally, I was not really into it when all the Packers receivers are in. I'll have more interest if Christian Watson is out, just because it makes it easier to figure out who to pair him with. Do you agree with that? Like, do you have interest in Jordan Love either way? What is your level of interest?
Yeah, so I feel like you have to like him just because the disparity between, which games are actually enticing and which ones aren't. But like I was saying, the Packers have leaned insanely run heavy since week 8. And over that span, Josh Jacobs has been going crazy. Jordan Love has really struggled. But before that, Love averaged 22.5 DraftKings fantasy points per game over his previous 13. So it's one of those things where it's like, well, if the Vikings push, force Love to lean pass heavy, like I think he can have that sort of 22.5 fantasy point per game expectation. It's really just a matter of willingness on the part of the Packers. And so, yeah, if that happens, that he could be a really good play. Like you said, no Christian Watson. Ideally, this condenses. It's like one of the more productive wide receiver rooms in the league, but it's like a gross 4-way committee. So not only is it tough to get right, but it caps the upside there. So you take one guy out of the equation, and then you have Wicks, who's a great value. Dobbs and Reed are strong values. Kraft, I think, would be getting slept on tremendously in the case of a Watson sitting out. Ryan said this is one of the best schematic matchups for any quarterback he's seen all season. It's a great schematic matchup for Jordan Love. I don't think people are factoring that in. But to me, ultimately, it's coming down to it's like a Josh Jacobs versus Jordan Love sort of thing. And I think Jacobs is kind of the better play, but yeah.
Okay. Josh Jacobs, man, last week he was about to destroy everything, and then they just took him out most of the second half. I think in a competitive game we're going to see a ton of Josh Jacobs. So yeah, that's a good call there. Baker Mayfield also getting 11% ownership against Carolina. He's more expensive than Darnold or Love. The matchup is right. How are we feeling about Baker Mayfield?
Yeah, that's okay. He's more expensive. He's just been better, like so much better from like a median standpoint, from a ceiling standpoint. Only quarterbacks with 7 or more games of 25, or most games with 25 plus DraftKings fantasy points. He's tied. He's tied with Burrow, Lamar, and Jaden. None of those quarterbacks being on the main slate. So from a ceiling standpoint, I certainly get it. But this is like what we've been saying for a while with Baker. Is like I'm kind of pushing to play him every single week. There was that stretch where their pass rate shifted from like top 5 to like bottom 10. And so that's kind of what it comes down to. It's like, is this a Bucky Irving game, or is it a Baker? Like Bucky could still get there in a great matchup. But Baker hogs the touchdowns, which is something he's done. And so that's really what it comes down to. We have to talk about Chuba Hubbard being a surprise placement on IR. The coach speak on this was Canales was asked if Hubbard was going to play, and he's like, "Oh yeah, he's going to play. We're still trying to win games, so of course he's going to play." Now, like, no one thought he was going to miss. And now he's on IR. Are you saying you're not trying to win games? And then you have Jake Plummer being activated, and then you have a number of injuries to like JC Horn is out, and Jadeveon Clowney's out, and A'Shawn Robinson's out, and so, or questionable or doubtful or whatever. I kind of think they're just giving up. And so Buccaneers versus a bad Panthers defense that's just giving up. I think Bucky Irving is one of the best plays of the slate. Then he kind of works his leverage on the entire game, sort of. But Baker's also in play. Like if he just hogs all those touchdowns, and like you could honestly play all of them, and you could play Baker with Bucky Irving. And so yeah, when you have these, these two games really standing out far and away as the best over under spots. This is really where the field's going to flock to. So I'm going to experiment with some like gross quarterbacks, and then hope I can just kind of capture leverage in the running backs and kind of avoiding the pass catchers as a way to get unique. But no doubt, obviously, like your first look at this slate, what stands out to you is Darnold and Baker.
Right.
But let's talk about the fourth quarterback from those two games. Bryce Young. Again, I kind of just think they're giving up. But no Chuba Hubbard means more volume from Young. This is a game we don't expect them to win, so should be expecting good volume. It's a really good matchup on paper. Bryce hit his career high in fantasy points when he faced him like 4 weeks ago. It is a really bad schematic. I think he's difficult to stack, or at least more difficult than maybe the field thinks. Ultimately, he's just okay to me.
So what does that mean? You think he's difficult to stack? Like you're not a fan of Adam Thielen, Jalen Coker, like the players that the field.
Well, I like Thielen the most for sure.
Okay.
But I think you add Xavier Legette back into the equation, it kind of muddies a bit. People like Coker a lot, but it was Legette who had the higher route share before his injury in the last game. They all had exactly 3 targets. Legette has the better matchup. He also had 8 targets in each of his last 2 healthy games. And so like I'm looking at Thielen, and it's like, all right, 33% first read target share in 3 straight games, really good production. He went off last time he faced them, but with Legette and Coker back, I don't know. It's okay. It just feels a little more tentative to me, maybe.
Okay. You said that you are interested in some off the wall plays. I know one that you liked last week was Mason Rudolph.
That's right.
Get the fantastic matchup with the Jaguars. Are you going back in on Mason Rudolph?
Yeah, dude. I'm excited to play Mason Rudolph. I might be the only one. But you look at what he's done, his last 3 starts, 21.5, 18.5, 17.4 DraftKings fantasy points at a 5K price tag. That is great. And then not included in those 3 games I just mentioned was week 15. He played 1 full quarter, fourth quarter, and then 1 drive. And that was it. Scored 16.8 DraftKings fantasy points. All this up against a really bad Bengals defense. Guess what? Jacksonville's defense is the worst in the league. They're really bad against the deep ball. That's great for Calvin Ridley, who has a great schematic matchup. And so, boom, right there, Mason Rudolph plus Calvin Ridley, easy stack. Bring back with probably BTJ. I think according to our projections, far and away the best wide receiver play of the slate. You could throw Chig Okonkwo on there. You could throw Tajay Spears in there. Now that Pollard's out, Jacksonville, one of the worst defenses at pass catching backs. Spears is an exceptional pass catching back. Also had 2 touchdowns last week. Yeah, I like me some Mason Rudolph, but that might just be me getting a little too galaxy brain. So I'm curious to hear how much you disagree on that.
No, I 100% agree. I like Mason Rudolph. He was actually, one of the galaxy brain plays that I like this week. Now, of course, maybe I'm somewhat influenced by you liking him last week, but also just like the matchup. Like you said, he's been good. He's cheap, pretty easy to stack, to know who you want to stack him with. So yeah, I'm with you. I think Mason Rudolph at really low ownership makes a lot of sense. Allows you to pay up for some other options. Yeah, we are on the same page with Mason Rudolph. I skipped over Josh Allen, who has been absolutely dominating. Other than, I guess, last week he was not that great, but generally he's been dominating.
Well, he had a he said his throwing arm went numb for an extended period in that game. So I think that's like a worthy excuse for why he struggled.
Yeah. So you're expecting him to be back to his normal like 45 fantasy point ways?
So I don't know about that. This isn't the spot where we would expect Josh Allen to go nuclear. He typically only goes like in games they need him to be Superman. He's Superman, and then all other games he kind of takes it a little easier, right? So it isn't that, but it's also like the dude is a freak of nature. He's hit 20 DraftKings fantasy points in 9 of his last 10 games, averages 28, has highs of 55, 44, 28 over his last 4 games. Like he could go nuclear without even trying, right? And then there's a chance he tries really hard. I've talked about Lamar's sort of stat pad and caring about the MVP race to a great degree. And so it's like, what if Josh Allen just wants to stay in contention, soak up all the touchdowns, rather than giving 2 to James Cook and 1 to Ray Davis? What if he gets all 5 and he breaks the slate? I think that's certainly conceivable. And so he's someone where, if you're making multiple lineups, I think you absolutely have to account for. It's also like a more unique lineup construction because for the most part, these are all pay down quarterbacks.
Yeah, that is true. Most of the quarterbacks we want to play, I mean, there's just nobody else on his level. 8,500. The next most expensive is 6,900. So yeah, that will be a bit contrarian. Aiden O'Connell against the hapless New Orleans Saints. Any interest there?
Yeah. So again, we have to talk about some of these teams. Like when you get this deep into the season, there are teams that are just totally giving up. It's just over. They know it's over. And you really saw that. I have no idea. Like one of the grossest games I've ever watched last week. And so I think they're fully given up. And then you have to think about what's Las Vegas's motivation. I feel like Antonio Pierce is gripping towards any sort of positivity, any sort of positive momentum. And you look back at week 15 last year, remember when the Raiders beat the Chargers 63-21 and he just never took his foot off the gas.
Yeah.
And so that could be something you're looking at this week. And hey, AOC scored like 26 DraftKings fantasy points in that blow up game. He only has 1 game over 12.5 all year. So it's easy to kind of just write him off. But as we've been saying with AOC, because we've talked about him maybe a few more times than he deserves, it's just there's so much upside when he does hit because of how condensed this offense is between Jacoby and Brock Bowers. So for sure, AOC stacks are in play, and I kind of like that narrative I crafted. Maybe not as much as I like it for a handful of other quarterbacks, but for sure in play.
Love it. Love that. We doing any Mac Jones?
Not really. I have respect for Tennessee's pass defense. I would just play Mason Rudolph.
Maybe I'll just open it up to you at this point. There's no other quarterbacks that I'm super into on this slate. Looks like I'm a chalk donkey. I mean, nobody's really that chalky on this slate. Do you have any other Galaxy Brain quarterbacks that you are interested in playing?
Well, I'll tell you right now, Darren gets the win because he has ownership reflecting no Anthony Richardson. Our projections do not. We are coming through a ton of late news, so I'm sure we'll have that probably within the next 30 minutes. Maybe by the end of the show. But yeah, so we get Joe Flacco instead of Anthony. Like that's confirmed, right? Pretty sure that's confirmed.
I don't that Joe Flacco starting.
Yeah,
I don't believe so. And I do want to correct myself.
Oh,
Joe Flacco is maybe my favorite quarterback on the slate. I totally missed him because he's not on the sheet there. I think we're expecting it, but I don't believe. Oh, Tom says it is confirmed. Never mind.
Yeah, it is confirmed. Okay.
My bad.
So he's 4,900. Always excited to play Flacco. Dude made me a shit ton of money last year. He made me a lot of money when he went off against the Jaguars. He's kind of flopped in all the other games this year, but those were sneaky, really tough matchups. And this week's matchup is amazing. Giants bottom 6 in fantasy points per dropback allowed, bottom 3 in adjusted net yards per attempt allowed. And they're even worse now by a landslide without Dexter Lawrence, without some of their other best defensive players. The issue here is like, I don't think the Colts get pushed at all. And like Flacco, we love because like when he goes full gunslinger, he's awesome. And there's just like no real need for him to go gunslinger. Arguing a little bit against that, the stack with Downs I think is incredible. You look at Downs numbers without Flacco. I just tweeted it out. I don't know if you want to pull it up, but really great. Like would lead the league in catchable targets per game. I think ranked top 2 in targets per route run, top 12 in fantasy points per game. And then with Richardson, who is averaging the fewest completions per game since Tim Tebow, like obviously that craters. You can say some of those splits are influenced by Pittman dealing with a back injury for some of that sample. I don't know. I still think like down and the Giants have been great against the slot, but really it's just like, I don't think you need to go there when the Giants are so bad everywhere. Ultimately, yeah, I like that. I love the value in Downs. I like that stack. But really to me, he feels more like a way to I don't know, gain leverage against a chalky Jonathan Taylor. Like it should be a Taylor nuke spot is what I'm saying.
Okay. So you love Jonathan Taylor, but you are also interested. I mean, no idea what Joe Flacco's ownership is going to be. I don't think it's going to be that chalky. What do you think? Like 8% or so Joe Flacco?
Yeah, I think the field typically underreacts to late news. Is that true even on Saturdays?
I mean, we got the news today that Antonio Gibson was going to start the game and he ended up 7% owned. Now, of course, the people who did not play Antonio Gibson were right. He did Stevenson started the games. Yeah.
Well, they did this to us, I think, like 6 weeks ago too. So.
They did. They at least in that game, they said Antonio Gibson's going to get the start and they gave him the first carry. So he at least did get the first carry. This game, he didn't even get the first carry. It was just fake news. So that was a bummer.
Yeah. Charbonnet was the captain and the starter 2 weeks ago and had 3 snaps.
Yeah.
They just like messing with us, I think.
They do. They do like.
Honestly, I think I like Rudolph more, but I feel like that's going to be the contrarian take.
Oh, you like Rudolph more than Joe Flacco? Interesting. Okay.
I think that's just me being weird. Like I don't think our projections will have it that way.
I think that's defensible. I don't know if I see it that way, but yeah, definitely defensible. Any other quarterbacks that you like? DTR or Huntley is going to be in play. That's going to be updated at some point. He's 4,000. He's a stone min. So like, he's got that going for him.
He does have that going for him. I was supposed to look into that before we recorded.
Brown noser talking to Ryan Heath.
Oh, I like the, yeah. So, I mean, Huntley was absolute ass in his three games this year. I think that really just kills Achane more than anything to me. I probably wouldn't go there, especially with Rudolph and Flacco available. Who did you ask me? Other quarterbacks I like?
DTR Huntley. There's nobody else who really I like.
I would say Rodgers, just because of the upside to that stack when it does hit. We saw that against Jacksonville. Obviously, like that's the nut spot, Jacksonville. But Bills have like struggled through the air. Maybe a lot of that is just Jared Goff and the Lions being so deadly, but most schedule adjusted over the last 5 weeks, also giving up the third most to wide receivers. We know they're going to be aggressively pass heavy. You stack it up with Adams. I don't know. That's probably about it for me.
Sean asked, what if Olave plays as Rattler on the table? I would say no, just because Rattler's been really bad. You're okay. Scott agrees. No Rattler, even if Olave does play. All right. Do you want to move on to running backs? I think we've talked about all of the.
Yeah. Again, it's kind of murky, and I haven't really settled on like for sure what my lineups are going to look like, and because the quarterback position is probably trickier than any of the others.
Yeah, true.
But the most important.
All right. Bucky Irving, the chalk at running back. I mean, we have actually 4 over 20%. Let's start with Bucky, though, because he's getting 35% ownership at 6,700. Obviously, great matchup against the Panthers. What are we doing with Bucky Irving?
Yeah, again, I think he's an elite play. You have coach speak coming out where Liam Cohen is kind of lambasting Rachaad White for his costly game-ending fumble and hyping up Bucky Irving, talking about how incredible he's been for them. It's a best possible spot on paper that only looks better given the number of injuries to their defense and the fact that, like I said, I think they're giving up. He went off against this team despite sharing the backfield. He had 30 plus DraftKings fantasy points in week 13. I think you could stack him up with Buccaneers defense. I think it's a way to gain leverage on a high over under game that everyone wants to play. So I really like Bucky Irving. I have no qualms with that ownership percentage.
Yeah.
Maybe it's flimsy just because, Rachaad White could still get work and Sean Tucker could even get work, but I don't know. I like that.
What do you think of the Rachaad White fumbled away their season, right? I think they still had playoff hopes until that fumble. I think maybe they're out of it. I actually don't know if they're completely out of it now, but fumbled away a lot of their playoff odds at the end of that game. Sounds like the coaches are pissed about that fumble. Do you think that they actually just bench Rachaad White and it's just Bucky time?
I think there's absolutely a possibility. Yeah. That's probably baked a little bit into the projection, but like I said,
so I guess that part of the reason I'm asking, because I wanted to ask about Rachaad White also getting 3% ownership at 5,700. It's a very natural, massive leverage spot. Also has a great matchup. The role has been pretty split between them. So if it doesn't go that way, if it is just still a split backfield, Rachaad White, I think would be a pretty fantastic play. Do you have any interest at 3% for large field tournaments?
Yeah, what you said makes a lot of sense. I'm probably only going to go with maybe 2 lineups this week, so I won't get there. But you're the MME bro for sure. That makes sense.
Yeah, for MMEs. All right, Achane. Now he's got Huntley at quarterback. How does that affect your level of interest in Achane, and how much interest do you have?
Yeah, it brings him down a great deal. So if Tua, one of the best running back plays of the slate for sure. But that was the stat we kept referencing, right? Where it's in games with Tua, he ranks second in XFP per game, second in fantasy points per game. Not as good without Tua, really hurts the offense as a whole. So it brings him down below some of these other guys.
We did just get news that Chris Olave is out. So somebody had just asked about the scenario where he's in. Well, don't have to worry about that anyway, because he was just ruled out. Aaron Jones, 6,200 against the Packers. He's been your guy kind of all year. You rolling with Jones at 6,200 here?
Yeah, he's been my guy, but now he's chalk, right? And so he had an 82% snap share last week. I want to say, okay, he's their bell cow. These are must-win games. So it doesn't make any sense to give Cam Akers any touches, but it's also like, it's kind of like fluctuated wildly week to week. And now he's chalky. I don't know. I think you play him in cash. I think he's a really strong cash play. 6,200 is way too cheap for a guy who just had an 82% snap share in the best over-under game of the slate. But I don't know if the bury you upside's there. The 25% ownership, that feels a little high.
So we're downgrading Achan for Tua being out. Are we downgrading Saquon Barkley for Jalen Hurts being out, or do we like him at 8,600, 22% ownership?
That one's a little more complicated. If you looked at like what Barkley did without Hurts, he had like a 80% stuff rate, right? And that was at like 10% with Hurts. It was something insane like that. And so I think it hurts the overall efficiency. And because that was like one of the cheat codes. Like when you're a running back and you have a hyper mobile quarterback, you see a significant boost to your yards per carry. It just puts an added strain on the defense. It helps you on the ground. You put in Pickett, that it's going to hurt his efficiency. You're going to see more stack boxes because teams also aren't worried about Kenny Pickett. But there's no threat of the tush push. I think he's going to see even more carries. I don't think they trust Kenny Pickett all that much. It's a great matchup. It's a really strong matchup for him. But I've been pounding the table for Saquon when his ownership's been, inexplicably sub 10%. Now he's chalky. So it's just, I think Jonathan Taylor, I think Josh Jacobs, I think some of these guys are a little more exciting to me.
Okay.
And I like, I should say AJ Brown, 7%. I think that's a fun way to pivot.
All right. A little sneak preview of the wide receivers there. Breece Hall, I mean, there's enough like sort of chalk at running back that I guess we should continue moving down. Breece Hall is getting 15% against Buffalo, 6,300. What do you think of Breece?
Yeah, really good usage last week, nearly an 80% snap share. The matchup, Bills aren't giving up a ton of raw fantasy points to running backs, but they're like on paper horrible against the run. You don't see a lot of runs against them just due to game script. And then through the pass, they're like an epically awesome matchup. And like Breece, we know is a guy who can get there just on the pass. Our projections really like him. So this is like sort of like a fantasy point stand. And we know he has spike week potential. I'm not really as excited about it as our projections are. But I get it at 6,300. By the way, you could stack Rodgers up with Breece and Adams if you wanted.
True.
But yeah, not super exciting. Not the most exciting to me, but a guy I'll definitely consider.
Wait, do we think Adams is playing?
Last I heard was the coach said he looked good on Friday and they're not worried about him.
Okay. Really hoping he doesn't play for all the teams he's on in best ball, but that's another story. Tyjae Spears, 5,400. Tony Pollard is not traveling with the team, so seems like it's going to be another Tyjae Spears week in a great matchup with Jacksonville. He's only 5,400. What is our level of interest in Spears here?
Yeah, I wrote him up as one of my favorite plays of the slate before we even got the Pollard news. You really saw him get more work than Pollard in the last game, had both of the team's carries inside the goal line. He scored on both of them. And so usage has been trending up. And then you had positive coach speak of them hyping up Spears, saying they really like Spears. He's been very efficient on like a per snap, per touch, per opportunity basis. And it's a great matchup against Jacksonville, really bad against the run. Not only that, but like worse in the league against the pass. If you wanted to pull up schedule adjusted for running backs, and Spears had like one of the most efficient rookie seasons through the air ever by, I think, yards per route run last year. And so, yeah, 2 touchdowns last week. Now he gets all the work. So I like him. I think, I also like Mason Rudolph. So you could play him with Mason. You could just make one lineup without Spears, one lineup with Spears. It's just, an awesome spot, and he's a tremendous value at 5,400.
Yeah, getting it done in the playoff weeks for people who have him. Hang on one sec. Jonathan Taylor, you have alluded to your interest in Jonathan Taylor several times. He's getting 14% ownership at 7,900. Do you think he'll be above 14%, or would you be if you were playing a 150 set?
We had an interesting debate about this on our projections call, whether Richardson being out would hurt or help Taylor. Again, it's the mobile quarterback efficiency thing. So I do think Flacco really hurts the efficiency, but I think you look at his success rate with Flacco, it just plummets, just like, with Saquon last week. And, but, no threat of goal line vultures, more volume overall, nuts matchup. Like, I don't expect the Giants to be competitive at all. Horrible run defense, especially this iteration of the Giants defense without their best run defenders. So I could see him going nuclear. It doesn't feel like last week where he had multiple 60+ yard rushing touchdowns, although he still has that. It feels like, Colts have great starting field position. He gets a bunch of goal line carries.
Yeah. Rico Dowdle, tough matchup with Philadelphia.
Yeah. I'm not going to chase that. It's just like he's run really hot with game script and favorable matchups, and it's just not that this week.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. Jerome Ford against Miami, 5,900. I don't know, could see significant usage as with the starting quarterback out. What's your level of interest there? I guess starting quarterback not. Whatever. It's an iffy statement there with the Browns because Jameis they benched him. I guess he's not injured. Anyway, what's our level of interest in Jerome Ford?
Well, the Browns defense now becomes one of the best values on the slate without Tua. I also think that helps Donta Foreman more than Ford with red zone opportunities, more favorable starting field position. I don't know. Ford's not high on my radar.
Okay. You've mentioned that you have interest in Josh Jacobs. He is 8,100, only 8% owned, so kind of a pay up to be contrarian spot for Josh Jacobs. Is he going to be in your first lineup that you make? How much do you like Josh Jacobs this weekend?
Well, again, I think it depends. If I'm making a Darnold team, I don't know. I might prefer Dontavian Wicks and Tucker Kraft and blah blah blah. But if you're making a lineup without Addison, without Jefferson, I think he's an awesome play. I really love him. I think he's a great play. The dude has scored at least 20 fantasy points in all 6 games since the team's bye. He's seeing ridiculously good volume. It's not a good matchup. It's a bottom 5 schedule adjusted matchup. It's a top 6 pass funnel. So not a good matchup. It is a good game environment, just given the over under. But again, I like the leverage he provides, and the dude has just been so rock solid. I think he's a great running back play.
Kendra Miller, seems like he's just very game script dependent. That was kind of my takeaway from that first game. Some people were like, oh, they just don't like him. He's not a starting running back. So I don't know. What is your takeaway for Kendra Miller? How much do they like him?
I don't know. That was disgusting. I have no idea what they're doing, but it gives me no confidence on a team I think is just given up. So he's not in my pool.
Okay.
Especially not when we have Mike Boone, the God, and Raheem Blackgoat to discuss.
Commonly known as the God, Mike Boone. Both 4,000. Is this kind of a do we need some coach speak here? How do we break the tie between Raheem Blackshear and Mike Boone?
I don't know. Like you said, you had the Joe Person tweet, who's like a very good beat writer. It also seemed like kind of jokey, like it's Boone season, folks. And it's like, I don't.
Right. That's true.
Yeah. You're like, give me a snap share projection. Right. So I don't really know. This is something I was planning on getting to later tonight and updating Discord, or maybe even just giving it up to Johnny to decide. But clearly there's upside here, even if this Panthers team is given up when you're talking about a 4K running back. And you're also talking about Dave Canales, who's just like the running back whisperer goat. You saw what Rashad White did last year. You've seen what Chuba Hubbard's done this year, which is like uber bell cow usage, getting involved in all phases of the game. He said in the offseason, he's like, you guys are going to be disgusted by how stubbornly run heavy I'm going
That's
to
right.
be. And like, yeah, it's a very running back centric offense. So there's upside there. And maybe, like, to your credit, brutal matchup on paper, but I don't know. Most likely outcome is neither guy was a good play, and it's a committee, and Bryce Young just passes a ton, right?
Yeah. Is this the Vita Vea effect? I feel like he's like they're just really good when he's in. It kind of seems to be more
That's a
pressing.
good call.
Yeah, because it's like for a period it was a really nice matchup against Tampa Bay. Seems like whenever he's in, it's tough, and I think he's in this week, so not an ideal matchup. Who else? Any other running backs that you have a lot of interest in? It's kind of gross out there beyond what we've talked about.
Well, Alexander Madison, again, I think the Saints are giving up. So he's just, he's a guy to consider. Really good matchup. Don't typically love the Raiders backfield, but he deserves a mention. And then I had some off the wall plays I got really excited about. Let's see who those were. James Cook deserves mention. It's just like anytime the Bills blow out a team, James Cook goes nuclear. He's not projecting well, and he shouldn't. He hasn't reached 15 XFP. He hasn't cleared a 50% snap share in any of his last 5 games. But even with that in mind, the dude has exceeded 19 fantasy points in 4 of his last 5 games, averaging 19.5. And then the stat was in 9 games, the Bills have won by multiple scores since Joe Brady took over. He averages 22.6, has exceeded 28 in 3 of them. And so it's just like whenever there's a Bills blowout, you really got to keep him in mind, perhaps especially on this gross slate. And then I have one last super gal brain you're probably never going to get to, and Ryan and Jake would get mad at me for even saying it.
All right, Jordan Mims.
No, Tank Bigsby, and maybe I was just thinking about this because of my love for Mason Rudolph. But here it is. And like, he's not as good as this argument's going to make him seem, but like, I need to frame it this way. Jaguars are favored. Bigsby averages 23 DraftKings fantasy points per game in Jacksonville's wins this season. He's averaging 8.87 fantasy points per snap when leading. That would lead all running backs. And then Jacksonville played the Titans a few weeks ago. They lost that game, but Bigsby still had 14 more carries than Etienne. Titans run defense, horrible. They gave up like 300 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns last week. Since week 13, they're the worst by yards per carry allowed by any stat you want to look at. So I don't think you could play him now with all these injuries that have come out, but he was someone I wrote words on. So
kind of interesting. As you see, you're 4th over the past 5 weeks, 4th best matchup in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy.
Well, best allowed on the ground, which is key because that's what Bigsby does.
Yep, exactly. So that's that's sort of an interesting play. Somebody that I had not really given much consideration to, but I kind of like it as a Galaxy brain play. Is that it? Yeah. Running backs. All right. Do you want to take your intermission? No intermission. We're just rolling through.
Let's raw dog it.
Let's raw dog it. All right. Brian Thomas Jr. is the highest projected owned wide receiver on the slate. I believe you said he's also the best. Yep, the best point per dollar wide receiver on the slate. 6,800.
Okay. Sorry.
That's it. Tell me, do you like him at 27%?
Yeah, dude, he's just awesome. We've been all over him each of the last, 5 weeks or all season. Since the bye, he's averaging like 12 targets, 24 fantasy points per game. One of the best rookie seasons ever. If you take out those 2 games where he was like seriously hurt, he would rank top 6 in yards per route run. It would be, since like 1985, the only rookie seasons ranking better would be Randy Moss, OBJ. So I just love this guy, and clearly the top point per dollar. Counter argument would be Titans are a really bad matchup. They're giving up a league low 18.1 fantasy points per game to wide receivers. That's raw, unscheduled adjusted, Neil. And then they're also like top 3 at shutting down the deep ball, which is, BTJ is getting more scheme stuff and design stuff and screens. And, but that is kind of like, for his upside to hit really where it comes from. Ultimately, I just think he's like a great play. Hard to argue with he just shouldn't be 6,800. And so you can just say it's as simple as that, but had to give that caveat in there just in case someone wants to live life outside of the box. You know what I mean?
Who would want to do that, Scott? And why would you come to this show for that?
Right.
Dontavian Wicks, 3,900, 26% ownership projected right now. So I guess we're already assuming Christian Watson is out. I don't know if that has been confirmed, but it seems pretty likely Watson's going to miss the game. So I guess we'll work under that assumption. How much do we like Watson this week? Sorry, Wicks this week.
Yeah, if that's the case, I don't know to me, it looks like a true game time decision. But if that's the case, he's an amazing play. It's a best possible matchup. It's Wicks already was kind of leapfrogging Jaden Reed in the pecking order. If you wanted to pull up like the snap share report, he's been out snapping Reed in recent weeks. And then you look at what happened last 2 games when Watson missed. He played like 5 snaps in one game and then he missed the other snap. Wicks was averaging 9.5 targets, 153 air yards, 20 XFP per game. And like, that is insane usage. He wasn't productive on it because he had a bunch of bad drops. There's also some bad luck with the catchable target rate, but it was like easily best on the team usage and volume. And then even last week, Watson left in the second quarter. Wicks had a team high 7 targets. That was 3 more than anyone else. And you're getting him at a 3,900 price tag. So insane upside relative to that price. I think he's a great play, a great tournament play.
In a dome. Yeah. Everything kind of lining up for Dontavian.
But I will say, Reed also gets a boost. It was Wicks who saw the better volume, but it's Reed who's been more productive when one of these wide receivers has been out. Dubs, I think, will get like similar volume similar target volume, less air yards, less upside. And that kind of is who he is to me. Like, maybe he scores twice, but otherwise I don't think he has the upside of a Reed or Wicks. We got to talk Kraft too, but without Watson would open up a lot of value here. It's still a little tricky to pick right. Which, makes the stack, I don't know, a little more difficult. If you're someone like me, you only makes 1 or 2 or 3 lineups. If you're someone like Neil, you just let the MME figure that out. And
yeah,
but yeah, Wicks, no doubt, insanely terrific value if Watson's out. You could even play him if Watson was in, by the way, but I mean, definitely would not be top 5 or top 10.
I had not thought about it. I did not realize how much the target, or sorry, this is snap share had gone up for Dontavian Wicks in recent weeks. And I guess I attributed these 2 weeks to Romeo Doubs being out, but back up to 61%. That's pretty interesting. I guess that's with Watson out. I don't know, but it's.
Oh, I guess you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's.
But I mean, like, it's just like more playing time than Reed, and he's 1,800 cheaper. So
they also did make 2 attempts to get him in the end zone at the 1 yard line on the first drive of this game in week 16, and they got him in on the second one.
Yeah,
which I thought was pretty interesting.
That one, Russ Miller, like what, $250,000?
Is that right? I missed that. Okay, good for Russ.
He's the goat of the Fantasy Points Discord, parlay god. Shout out Russell
Miller. Justin Jefferson, 8,300, also in a dome, 21% ownership. How much do we like Justin Jefferson? I guess Jordan Addison is just 2 below him, getting 17% ownership at 6,300. Do you play both of them? How are you liking the Vikings receivers?
Yeah, that's a great reason to play Darnold this week. Is both wide receivers are projecting as top 5 values. Addison has really come up in terms of target share. He's like neck and neck with Jefferson since week 11, 27% versus 25%. Jefferson only barely edges edges him out in fantasy points per game, 20.8 versus 20.3. But Jefferson's 2 highest scoring games this year have come over the last 3 weeks. 2 highest target share games the last 2 weeks as well. So you could say like it's trending up. I think ultimately to me, Addison would be the better pure value. But Jefferson probably offers more slate breaking potential. They're both really good plays. They're both strong values.
Yeah. What about Mike Evans? Sandwiched between them, getting 18% ownership at 7,500. How much do we like Mike Evans this week?
Yeah, projections really like him. He's been kind of volatile since he's come back, but it seems like this should be a spot for a boom game. Because there's no K-Dot and there's no Sterling Shepard. It's a top 10 matchup. It's a perfect schematic matchup. He went off against them 4 weeks ago. JC Horn is out. But again, like I'm worried about this team just totally giving up. And so, maybe it's just an Irving week and Bucks don't need to try, or maybe they can both go off.
What do you think of the narrative of like Baker has said, I care more about the 1,000-yard season streak continuing than Mike Evans does.
Wow.
He needs 182 more yards. Kind of feel like they're just going to feed him until he gets at least like 120 in this game, make it easy on them. I don't know. That is totally narrative based. But I kind of think there's something to that narrative. Would you agree?
Yeah. Well, why not get him more yards last week then?
Because it was, I don't know, who were they playing last week? How many yards did he get? He's still right there. Still just needs 182 for the rest of the year.
Yeah, he only had 69 in a loss against Dallas last week. I don't know. I'm kind of with you. I kind of think it's real, but I mean, he could have 90 and still be on pace, right?
True. So you're not buying that they're just going to jam it to him. I thought the same thing last week with Trey McBride. It was like, it would make so much sense. Like Kyler's saying he's going to get him in the end zone. Of course they're going to do it against Carolina where it's easy. And then it didn't happen. So maybe I'm just a fool.
No. I think that's a fine, like I said, Evans is a great play.
Yeah.
Sick matchup. And so, yeah, if they just want for Evans to break the record, they could do that. They could do whatever they want against the Panthers.
Yeah. Calvin Ridley, you like Mason Rudolph? Do you like Calvin Ridley just as much at 5,500?
Yeah, he's averaging 9.3 targets in Mason Rudolph starts, 15.7 DraftKings fantasy points per game. That's really good. Better than that, he's averaging 93 catchable air yards per game. That would lead the league, basically cut in half in any game with Will Levis. It's his best schematic matchup of the season. It's a easy top 3 matchup on paper. Jaguars are also worse in the league at defending the deep ball. So that's Ridley's wheelhouse. So I think he's a great tournament play. I like him a lot.
Okay. Jalen McMillan also in that Carolina matchup, 4,600. Do you like him?
Yeah, he's really cemented himself as the number 2 there. Should be especially the case with Shepard and Otten both out. It's a really good matchup. He's been productive these last 3 weeks. A lot of that's coming on touchdowns, but I don't know. Those are worth a lot of fantasy points. I think he's a strong value at that price. Probably doesn't. Well, he doesn't compete with the Josh Downs now that Flacco's in, but he's up there.
Yep. Jacoby Myers.
Yeah, I get why he projects so well for us. The target share is pretty great. I will say I feel like I've been a little too high on him these last few weeks. He none of his spike weeks have come with AOC. They were all with Minshew. He hasn't scored over 16 fantasy points in any game with AOC. So AOC to me, like that represents a bigger bump to Bowers. But top 10 value, sure.
Okay.
Just not super high on my list.
Who else do we like
when I'm narrowing down to 2 lineups? Next one on your list is Neighbors, who is dealing with a toe injury. He's hit 15.5 DraftKings fantasy points just once over his last 9 games. So at 15%, like I kind of don't mind getting away from him.
Yeah.
Volume's insane. Like this is like 6,600 for this volume is like one of the best I've ever seen this deep in the season. But the Giants are so bad. I'm wearing their sweatshirt, but they are so they are like full orders of magnitude worse than any other team in the bottom 5. That it's you really have to discount the good volume he's getting.
Yeah.
Like BTJ is in a bottom 7 passing offense, but like that's great. It's not the Giants' bottom 1.
Yeah. All right. They tried and he dropped a few big ones. Oh, Tom talking about Trey McBride. Yeah. Well, he also, I think I predicted it maybe on this show, like jokingly, I was like, maybe they'll just pass interference in the end zone on Trey McBride last week. And then they did. They threw it to him in the end zone and there was a pass interference called. So yeah, they wanted to keep him out, I guess. Adam Thielen, you sort of talked about, like, I don't know, you talked about this a little bit earlier when we were talking about quarterbacks. How much do you like him at 15%?
Yeah, he's solid. Double-digit fantasy points in each of his last 4 games, averages 18. When these two teams faced off, he would have scored 29 if not for that touchdown, which everyone agrees was a touchdown that we said wasn't a touchdown. 33% first read target share in each of his last 3, ranks top 10 over that span. No Chuba Hubbard, should mean more pass volume. Leggett and Coker both being there kind of muddies the waters a little bit, but yeah, he's a strong value.
We got the question, is this Downs projection with Flacco? I'm assuming not.
No.
Yeah.
So with Flacco, that probably jumps to top 5. Let me pull up my tweet that I just put out, or maybe you should pull it up. But yeah, with Flacco, would rank first in targets per route run, second in catchable targets per game, 12th in fantasy points per game. Again, like Michael Pittman was dealing with a back injury. Giants, you look at schedule adjusted, they're elite against the slot. So those are, and then, do they really need to push things too much against the Giants? I don't know. To me, easy top 5 value.
Okay.
But there are some concerns there.
All right. All right, whatever. So we like some Josh Downs here. What about Pittman? Like, he's should theoretically benefit also from Joe Flacco being in a quarterback. That has not really been the case. He's not targeted nearly as much. Only 3% ownership though. Any interest there?
No, to me the lean is Downs. Who's seeing elite Puka Nacua-esque volume with Flacco. But like I said, maybe that was just a function of the back injury. Outside of Flacco doubles, no, I would just go with Downs.
Okay. Garrett Wilson, what do we do? I guess you think Devontae Adams is going to play in this one, so maybe we don't need to talk about it. But like, if Devontae Adams were out, I would assume Garrett Wilson at 6,100 would become more of a priority.
Yeah, I think Adams is going to play, but Wilson does have I don't know, some coach speak, but I liked my narrative more, where he's really been an afterthought since that tirade on the sidelines and Rodgers not playing for anything other than hooking his boy up with a fat new contract.
Yep.
It's also a way better matchup for Adams. It's Bills are a slot funnel. And remember, like earlier in the season, Adams ranked, I don't know, bottom 30 in yards per route run, bottom 5 in ass. Around week 10, they moved him to the slot on 55% of his routes. So he would have the better matchup. I like Adams a lot. Much more than this ownership suggests, actually.
Okay, so assuming Adams plays, we're going in on Adams. I like that. Only 7,100, 11% ownership. Scott, we've talked a lot about Wan'Dale Robinson on this show, and it never even occurred to me that you're a Giants fan, and maybe that plays into how much you hate Wan'Dale Robinson. He's getting some ownership this week. He is getting 12% projected ownership at 4,400. I assume we're not playing Wan'Dale Robinson.
I would rather lose $2 million than win $1 million playing Wan'Dale Robinson. Okay.
I figure we always need to talk about Wan'Dale Robinson, at least get your take week to week on Wan'Dale Robinson.
I won't kill you if you play Wan'Dale Robinson this week.
You'll kill me if I play him? Oh, man.
I won't.
Oh, you won't. You won't kill me.
I'll
Okay.
let you live.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
But Slayton to me would be the better value at 3,300. In the 2 games that Neighbors missed, if you count just like one play that was negated due to a stupid penalty, he averaged 11.5 targets, 118 yards, not air yards, 118 yards, 24 fantasy points per game. Things are obviously different now without Daniel Jones, but it's really good value and like upside that people aren't going to think is there at that 3,300 price tag. So Darius Slayton if Neighbors is out.
Okay, good call there. Are we stacking up Josh Allen all? Khalil Shakir coming in at 8% owned at 5,600. What do we think of Khalil Shakir or anybody else?
Michael Carter, I think, is out or questionable. Sauce Gardner is questionable. You can stack them up, but like, Shakir, not really a guy with big upside, not really like a tournament play in my eyes. I think if you're an MME bro like Neil, you could certainly do that. But to me, if I'm making just a handful of lineups, probably not. And if one of those is an Allen lineup, it's really only if the guy fits perfect. I wouldn't try and force a stack.
Okay. We've gotten down to, we've talked about Jaden Reed. We've talked about Jalen Coker, Romeo Dobbs, AJ Brown. We haven't talked much about AJ Brown. You alluded to your having some interest in AJ Brown at 5% ownership. Do you want to go into that at all?
Yeah. So he leads he has the best first read target share in fantasy points data history. Last week, it was 72.2%, which is the best by any player in any game in fantasy points data history. He's hit a new season high in XFP in back-to-back games. He could, like, Kenny Pickett could be the cure to what ails the AJ Brown. Like, it's like he's seen 8 total targets in the second half all year. Eagles ranked dead last in pass attempts per game. If he ran as many routes as Jamar Chase, he'd have 2,000 receiving yards by now. It's a top 5 matchup on paper. It's an ideal schematic matchup. And he's drawing low ownership. When you saw what happened last week, 75% first read target share. Like I can't not see that and get super excited and want to play him. So I like him. I think he works as leverage off of Saquon Barkley. Why not just play that? So like me some AJ Brown quite a bit. I was into CD AJ Brown minis before the CD news, but
sad. Are you're not running back with any other Dallas receivers in lieu of CD Lamb?
I don't think so.
All right, fair.
Be sick if Kevontae Turpin got that CD role, but there's just no level of confidence in that.
Yeah. I don't know any other receiver. Ryan Miller is getting 6% ownership for Tampa Bay. Haven't given any thought to Ryan Miller. Have you any interest there?
No, I have not. Nick
Westbrook-Akine in your Mason Rudolph stacks?
Probably not. Due to like averages like 3 XFP per game, but scores touchdowns almost every week.
Yep.
Could be. He has the same great matchup Calvin Ridley has.
Yeah. I actually
him as an XFP guy.
I'm currently starting him in lieu of CeeDee Lamb in one of my championship teams, which is pretty brutal. So I lost CeeDee Lamb, looked at the waiver wire, and it's like, man, it was like Sterling Shepard, who's now out, and it ended up on Westbrook-Akine, which does not feel good. Looks like Jalen Waddle's, I guess, we can't play Jalen Waddle with Huntley, can we?
I would not.
Do you have any other Galaxy brand wide receivers you want to talk about?
I do not.
All right. That makes things easy. Let's move on. Let's talk about some tight ends.
Just consider Reed and Dubs, especially if Wicks is going to be popular, but for sure Wicks is the better play on paper.
Yeah. but all sort of in play there at least.
Bro, TJ Hawkinson, that is wild to me.
Is it? I mean,
yeah,
playing in a dome, the matchup, like he's been pretty good recently.
No,
I don't know.
He's kind of sucked recently.
His usage has been okay. Let's see. Let me pull it up. Let's go. Advanced receiving.
He has 0 touchdowns this year.
Do you think that's predictive?
And he averages like 40 yards per game.
All right. Well, let's look at the game log. Because maybe you're right. Maybe that is too much ownership. Feels like it's too cheap for the matchup. And
I mean, yeah,
people want to play Darnold. So, like, if you're stacking that game, it's like, oh, TJ Hawkinson, 4,500. He could score 2 touchdowns. Yeah, 4 targets last game on 68% route participation. 7 targets in week 15 on 79%. So, he had that game. Actually, 5 against Atlanta, 76%. Like, the role is not bad.
I mean, you could pull up the target share report. It's just not the same usage that he saw last year, where it was like, oh, he's the number 2. It's like, no, Addison is very clearly the number 2. And then there's a large gap between Addison and Hawkinson. I don't know. John Hansen really likes him. I think if you dig into the schematic stuff, it's interesting. Obviously, it's the highest over-under game of the slate. So there's touchdown equity to be had. Green Bay is also a tight end funnel matchup on paper. But he wasn't high on my list, especially not as chalk.
Okay. All right. What about Jake Ferguson? 3,700. No CeeDee Lamb. What do we think?
Yeah, if you I mean, he had 9 targets last week. CeeDee Lamb is out. He's the cheapest he's been ever, maybe. A little concern is like if you look at like snap share report or the route share report, he's not at his typical 80%. The last 2 weeks, he's been at 55%. I don't know what to make of that. But I mean, yeah, 9 targets last week and CeeDee Lamb's out. If that's the only argument you want to make, like that's a great argument.
Yeah, 76%, 60%, 63%.
Yeah, it's actually, it looks worse by snap share, but it has come down by route share as well. I don't know. I wrote him up as the cash tight end. I certainly just 3,700. I get it.
Yeah. Chig is 3,600, getting 16% ownership. Again, you like Mason Rudolph. Is Chig going to be part of your stacks there?
I don't like Chig as much as I did last week, but I do like him. Season high route share, 81%. Scored nearly 20 fantasy points. It was just a best on paper matchup, a best schematic matchup. I think Rudolph represents like a big boost for him. His target per route run jumps by 63% with Rudolph. I will say, like, there was some coach speak where the coach was kind of like, he's been shredding prevent defense basically. And like, you look at the numbers, like a lot of his production's coming the 3rd and 4th quarter blowouts. This isn't a blowout. That might be me nitpicking it too much, but yeah, like at the end of the day, one of the better values of the slate, you could stack him with Rudolph for sure.
All right. Payne Durham is 2,900. No Kate Otten this week. So Durham, 7 targets last week, 14% ownership. How do you feel about Payne Durham?
Yeah, 2,900 is a great price for a guy who just saw 7 targets. It's a really good, it's a top 5 matchup for tight ends. So, we were talking about Baker being expensive relative to where he's been, but that would be a way to make it cheap. McMillan's cheap as well. So, yeah, this is fine. You don't need much of an argument for sub 3 tight ends.
Yep. On the other end of the spectrum is Brock Bowers, 6,700, getting 12% ownership. What do you think about 12% there?
Yeah, if you look at his numbers without in games where Ritter did not play, he would rank 3rd best in yards per game, 2nd best in fantasy points per game, and 5th best in target share among all slate eligible wide receivers. He's priced as basically the wide receiver 8. And so, upside's rare to be had at a tight end position, especially on this week's slate. So he's a good play. I don't know that I'm going to try and force him in, but 6,700 feels like good value.
You said you want to talk about Tucker Kraft. He's getting 7% ownership. How much do you like Tucker Kraft?
I like him a lot, especially if Watson's out. If you look at games where Watson or Dobbs played on fewer than 10 snaps, in those games, Kraft leads the team in receiving yards. You've seen a 77% route share up from 68%, 18% target share up from 11%, 65 yards per game, that doubles, 18.3 fantasy points per game up from 7.5. And so like everyone gravitating towards Wicks, who, by the way, like, yeah, for sure, awesome play. I think they're going to forget that the tight end gets a bump too. It's a little fluky, just like the XFP didn't rise that much, but the production did. But still 3,900, highest over under. I think he's a good play.
Yep. No David Njoku this week. So Jordan Akins filling in 2,700, but he has Dorian Thompson-Robinson throwing him the ball. How much? He's getting 6% owned at 2,700. How much do you like Jordan Akins?
Yeah, not really. It's a committee. I think it's just those 5 tight ends to me, and that call it a day.
So we're not going back to, we can't do Jonnu anymore with Snoop Huntley at quarterback.
I don't think so. It's also like not a good matchup on paper.
Yeah. What happened to Michael Mayer? I thought Michael Mayer was like starting to become a thing, and then he's just kind of gone away.
Yeah, I don't know. When you have the best tight end ever, maybe you don't need
that
the
hurts.
second one so much.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, I don't think I have any other tight ends that I have any major interest in, so maybe we move on.
We can do that.
Want to make some lineups?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. All right. This is for the Sunday slate. Good.
No, let's play the 3-3-3-3 Millie.
Oh, you want to put 3? Do I have that? I don't have any money in my account. Wait, do I have any money in my? No, I need to deposit. All right, give me a second, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to enter these lineups. I forgot. Entered my entire
I can
bankroll.
enter it in my account.
No, because I want to.
Okay, I just don't want you showing your credit card.
Oh, I'm gonna deposit on my phone.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah.
All right, sick.
Yeah, come on. All right. 1 second. There we go.
Who should our first quarterback be, chat? Sound off in the comments.
All right. So we need to do a Mason Rudolph lineup for you, a Joe Flacco lineup for me, and then one more. Although I guess we're both kind of in on both those quarterbacks. So, it makes sense to build both those two. But yeah, who should be our third quarterback?
So we're doing Mason and who else?
Joe Flacco.
Yeah, and then we'll do a Darnold, or one of the chalky Baker.
All right. What do you want to do first?
Well, let's do Mason.
Deanna wants a Josh Allen lineup.
Okay, you're the boss, Deanna.
All right, let's do that.
Whatever you say.
First person in chat to give us an idea. So, we'll do Josh Allen second. So let's start with Mason Rudolph. Calvin Ridley, I assume.
Ridley, BTJ, Tajay or Chig, or neither. Probably Tajay. Or we can just kind of leave that empty for now.
All right.
I mean, he is such a good play. Do
you want to fill in our defense so we get an idea for our salary?
Browns. Chalk.
All right. So we have another wide receiver play. Do you want to throw Wicks in here or pay up?
I think AJ Brown is interesting. Adams is interesting. Or we just go cheap with Wicks or Downs. Let's click on the running backs. And so this is what I was saying is like, all right, let's try and find a way to hope that the 2 high over under games are more lopsided than people think. So Bucky and Jacobs.
Bucky, there we go. Jacobs. All right.
Tight end, whatever tight end you want. Doesn't matter.
Tight end doesn't matter. All right.
Or Chig.
Yeah, I guess we don't have Tajay in there yet. Could do Chig. All right, sure. All right, another wide receiver. Do we want Jaden Reed?
No.
No. AJ Brown?
Yeah, I mentioned that.
You did.
Brown or Adams, you could do.
If it's Adams, though, if he ends up being out, I'm gonna not remember to take him out. So
Yeah, but he's gonna play and he's gonna nuke the slate. You're not gonna have him.
do you want to go Adams?
Let's do AJ Brown.
Thank God. Okay.
Let's do
4,100.
Spears and take out Chig. Or we could have just done Blackshear right there, or Boone.
True. If
Spears.
we put Spears in here, then we don't have quite enough left,
Oh,
so we'd have to
all
adjust.
right, go down to
someone
Adams.
from
Your
Brown.
boy, your favorite.
My boy, Devontae Adams. I do really like his commercials. I think those are good commercials.
And then
Talk
Payne, Durham, Smythe.
Boom. Payne, Durham, Smythe. Look at that lineup. Came together so nicely. We've got Mason Rudolph with Calvin Ridley and Tajay Spears. We have Brian
Are you
Thomas.
sure you don't want to deposit $4,000 because that wins the 333
That
million?
it does. That is true. Good point. I'll think about adding that later.
Okay.
Devontae Adams one off. Josh Jacobs one off. Brown's defense against Huntley. Payne Durham paired up with Bucky Irvin. Looks good. All right. So there's our first one, our Mason Rudolph lineup. Now we'll do another. Let's do our Josh Allen.
Yeah.
See, I'm always inclined to stack. So I don't love the idea of playing naked Josh Allen, but we have seen it several times that has been what you need is just Josh Allen without any pass catchers. What do you think? Do you want to stack him up or no?
I don't. Yeah, like I said earlier, I don't want to think about it until like later. If Kincaid fits perfect, whatever.
All right.
Or
Fine.
Khalil Shakir fits perfect, whatever. I'd put Adams on this one too, though.
Yep.
Or
That makes
Brees. Probably Adams for me.
Okay.
Personally.
Let's do Adams.
Personally.
Do you want Bucky?
Let's do Wicks and Downs. Let's get some value in there.
Yeah. Good idea. All right. Could do a defense.
Let's just do Browns D and then maybe move out.
Okay. Tight end. We could do Kincaid at tight end. Put in our running backs first.
Let's make a Taylor lineup. We don't have a Taylor lineup yet.
True. Okay.
And we could throw Spears in here for the value, or we can.
Spears makes sense in there. Now we have 5,000 left.
Wow.
We could go double tight end with Brock Bowers. We could go Kraft. Kraft gives us 6,100 for our flex.
Yeah, we're already playing Wicks. I don't know if you could probably play both.
True. Yeah.
You could do the Hawkinson Wicks stack.
That's true. We could do a little mini there.
Again, I think he's overowned, but whatever. I get it.
We could still do Kincaid here. And then we have enough for.
How funny would it be if your best ball team was a naked Allen, and then you won a milli with a naked?
It would be hilarious if I won a million. If I won a million best ball, that would be really funny. We could.
Well, here's what we do: is let's just play around with shit. Click on. on my love for AJ Brown, I should just mention he was spotted in a knee brace earlier this week. He's dealing with a knee injury. It was the same injury he had all of his last game, but there's a chance I'm wrong and like Devonta goes off, but 76% first read target share for AJ Brown. That's my heavy lean. All right, just click on Payne, Durham, Smythe, or Brock Bowers, and let's just see what happens with the flex spot.
All right, if I go Brock Bowers, then we have 3,300 left.
Slayton.
It
would be, but you need Neighbors out for that.
Yep. Otherwise, we could go.
Let's try out the Hawk mini and see what happens.
Hawkinson with
Ridley. Boom.
Ridley.
That's great. Yeah.
Look at that. Damn.
Done.
That works out.
Money.
All right, so we are completely unstacked. I hate this lineup, but we do have the game stack. We have the bring back of Devontae Adams. We've got Jonathan Taylor one-off, Tyjae Spears paired up with Calvin Ridley. We have Josh.
Well, you could force a stack and pay up for a defense. This is our second straight chalk defense lineup on an outside the box show.
It is.
But I like it.
Yeah. We can keep this. We can play the occasional non-stacked lineup, I suppose. We have Wicks and Hawkinson and other little stacks. We have some correlation throughout the lineup. We just don't have the quarterback stack, and Josh Allen, obviously the type of quarterback that if you're going to not stack, he is one of the more viable. So I think it works.
Well, I will say generally, the larger your stack, the less contrarian you need to be everywhere else. And so like on a naked, you kind of have to go more contrarian with the other, but whatever.
Yeah.
You guys all know that.
Yeah.
Like if you're doing a full game stack, that's like quarterback, 2 pass catchers, plus an opposing playmaker, you can kind of go chalky from there.
Yeah. Not a lot of people going to have it. So yeah, that's true. Do we want to do that with Joe Flacco? Do we want to throw in Alec Pierce, my boy? Michael Pittman?
Ugh. And there's no bring back.
Yeah.
See, this is why I like Mason more,
True. It is easier to build. I mean, Neighbors is a bring back. Neighbors he's still targeted over 10 times per game.
That's true.
I know it's bad, but
he has a hurt toe though.
Yeah, he's a tough guy though. He'll be okay.
Yeah, he's tough. You're right. I am wearing a Giants sweatshirt.
Yeah, just shitting all over the Giants while wearing a Giants sweatshirt. Could go Malik Neighbors. We don't need to stack it up. We also could throw Jonathan Taylor into the stack. Yeah. Do I want to do that? Full on Colts stack.
I want to play a different quarterback. Let's make a.
Fine.
Let's make a Baker or Darnold onslaught.
Okay. Let's do Baker.
Okay.
Let's do Baker.
I say you play all 3 pass catchers. Fuck it.
Durham, Smythe, and McMillan.
I think I like Donald more just because.
All right.
Because of Irving, I don't know. This is what makes it tricky. If you were only allowed 3 lineups on this show.
We're only allowed 3. That is true. In the bylaws, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison.
Yeah.
Wicks will make this a lot easier. Yeah.
Wicks. Kraft. YOLO.
Ooh.
Onslaught. Spears. Bucky.
Bucky and Spears.
Yeah. Scroll down.
Defense.
Let's just see Bucks and see what we can do.
See Bucks?
Yeah, click on Buccaneers defense.
Sure. Gives us 5,700. Rashad White, Adam Thielen, Alexander Madison.
No, I don't like it.
Let's see if we move down off the Buccaneers. I mean, we throw Jaden. I mean, we already have the double stack with 2 bringbacks.
What about BTJ?
I don't know if we're going to be able to make that work. What is his price? I mean, let's see. If we pay all the way down for Jets defense, oh, then never mind. We will be able to fit BTJ. So he's 6,800.
Yeah,
so
and
then
you can
we could
make our third straight Browns defense.
We can't get to Browns. We can get to Giants. Giants against Flacco.
Yeah. I don't know. I have to pee, so why not?
All right, we're doing it.
Nice.
We've got the double stack: Sam Darnold with Jefferson and Addison, double bring back in Wicks and Kraft. We have a little mini stack of Tyjae Spears with Brian Thomas Jr., Bucky Irving, one off, and Giants defense. Boom, book it. All right, Scott. Before you pee, can you let people know where they can find you? What else you have coming up the rest of the weekend?
Yeah, it's a Johnny week. So can't wait to hang out with him tomorrow morning. Break down the slate, figure out who our top 3 quarterbacks in the week are going to be, and favorite stacks and all that. So check it out. Fantasy Points Discord.
Alex, that's why the Wicks love. This all assumes that Christian Watson is out, which is kind of 50-50 right now. Still a fine play regardless. All right, I will have my Sunday Night Football stuff out at Fantasy Points tomorrow. I'll be doing another show tomorrow night for the Sunday Night Football slate. That's the next place you can find me on in the Flannelverse YouTube channel, and of course in the Fantasy Points Discord as well. Thank you, Scott, as usual. Thank you all for hanging out with us during the show, and we will catch you next week for the Week 18 version. See you then.
What?
Why are you shaking your head? You're welcome.